What's going on, everybody? Mortem here, this time bringing you an early preview of Every Day We Fight, a TRPG with some really innovative mechanics that I'm actually pretty excited to talk about, that is releasing into early access on July 10th. While I am bringing you this early preview, courtesy of a bit of access provided by Hooded Horse, the publisher, that's not actually the first time I had heard about this game. Rather, this game has been on my radar for years, actually. All the way back in 2023, I made a video talking about tactical games and how a lot of their combat systems had gotten a little stale and nobody was trying to do anything new. Well, following that video, another YouTuber, Christopher Odd, who is involved in the development of this game, I fully admit I don't know his exact role, I just know he's involved in it, reached out after I made that video to show me what was going on with this game. And while it was very early at the time, even back then it had some cool ideas, but ultimately wasn't really in a place to actually show people what it was all about just yet. Fast forward a couple years to now, and here we are. So the innovation that I'm really talking about here is primarily down to how the game blends turn-based tactical battles with some real-time elements, because your turns actually involve first-person aiming, and even things that trigger overwatch or a reaction on your part in some way, which this game calls a reflex action, typically involves you taking control of that character and manually aiming your shots and things like that. Which is one of its core mechanics that it even brings into the exploration phase, because while this is in fact a tactical game, there is a bit of free roam exploration where you'll be able to unlock weapons and things to use on later runs, and simply wander around the city and engage in battles as you please. More on that in a moment, because let's back up a little bit. What is this game actually all about? So, Every Day We Fight puts us in the role of three survivors of not only a civil war that was going on in their city, but also an alien invasion that happened during the middle of it. Now, this invasion seems to have largely frozen everybody in the city in a sort of time loop. For whatever reason, our three protagonists here were excluded from this and have been using their time to, of course, try to dismantle what the aliens are up to. Now, curiously, this seems to involve a bit of time shenanigans, because every time you die, you are in fact resurrected, where you can simply try things again, which does lead itself to a small sort of roguelike element to it. Your starting equipment for most missions is randomized, as an example, but at least here in this preview, not much else seems to actually change, so it's kind of like just trying the mission over again, with a few variables thrown in. But, of course, using that to our advantage, we're going to take the fight to the aliens literally every day, as the title might imply, in an attempt to not only save this city, but also free yourselves from the grasp of these aliens who seem to be sort of strip mining the planet while it's frozen in time. An interesting enough premise that promises a variety of different missions taking on the alien leaders, the typical stuff one might expect from a slightly XCOM adjacent title. But let's get on to the more interesting stuff. Now, as I've already mentioned, the sort of core mechanic involves actually manually aiming and performing your turns as they happen. Now, functionally speaking, behind the scenes, this still takes place as an action point system. Every turn, your characters have action points, and they have to use them to do things like reloading, shooting, of course, using items, moving, all the usual stuff, and of course character-specific actions as well, with the simple caveat there being that you have to actually manually line things up, which means there is a sort of extra action you can take, which is holding your breath, which helps you zoom in a little bit if you want to aim at a specific body part, and probably unsurprisingly makes things like line of sight particularly important, because if you can see an enemy you can probably shoot them, but it's worth a mention that you do not have pinpoint accuracy. You can of course see that little circle anytime you aim at something, and that is the general spread of any shot that you'll be taking, so it can kind of land anywhere within that. Now, while that is pretty neat for your turn, what is actually interesting to me is that when you perform actions like Overwatch or trigger an ability that allows you to take any sort of reaction, you do typically also control that as well. Now, in some cases, you'll simply have a passive ability called a scramble, which means when you get shot at, you'll have a moment to get that character to move, much in the same way enemies do. This can actually help you reach cover a little more reliably, especially if it's just out of reach, which I thought was fun. But in terms of the Overwatch, it is actually a little neat because it forces you to shoot at a moving target, because what triggers your Overwatch is in fact movement, and that doesn't stop while you're doing this, it's just slowed down a little bit, which again adds a certain dynamic element. But then we take that system and expand on it a little bit with environmental actions, because we can of course shoot the traditional red barrels which come in the the form of these red fuel tanks that are typically around cars and the like. You can actually just shoot vehicles as well in your various aiming modes to potentially blow them up if their fuel tank is not readily available. And then this also affects environmental exploration in the sense that blowing things up can actually open up new paths for you, adding a certain tactical element to it. Speaking of tactical elements, though, another thing this game likes to do, seemingly, is play around with verticality. One of the first missions you do actually puts you in this hotel that has like 3 or 4 floors that you have to navigate and shoot around at in regards to the various enemies and the like. Now, where a lot of the combat, as I mentioned, makes use of that sort of free aim system, some stuff does not, like throwing a grenade is the same as it is in every tactical game, which I don't think is necessarily a bad thing, just worth noting. Now, as I mentioned a bit earlier, there is an exploration element outside of combat as well. So it looks like when you're tackling missions, you'll be able to explore this city, which has, of course, items and the like you'll be able to pick up and find. And once you've found a certain item, it gets added to the potential starting pool of anything you might find when you go to begin exploration of the city. And then, of course, you can find stuff as you explore in terms of weapons to swap out and utilize. And while you're doing all of that, you're almost certainly bound to level up. And as our 3 characters here level up, they earn skill points to spend on their individual skill trees to expand and progress what they're able to do, both in terms of weaponry and abilities. Now, honestly, that's kind of the basics of what there is to know about this. In many ways, I would say it's a testing ground for this mechanic, but I did want to explain one of my favorite things about why I think this all works, and that is because it makes different weapon types feel unique. So when I have a shotgun as an example, a shotgun has a very large spread, and that is of course reflected when you're actually shooting it in first person. And there's a not insignificant chance of just, missing, which makes things like mischance largely come down to, the same typical stuff, cover and distance and things like that, but it's because it is quite literally affecting your ability to accurately shoot at the enemy. So it's a interesting mix of the typical mechanics and a little bit of player skill at the same time. And while I didn't experience too much of it here, they do have a sort of mod system where you'll be able to sort of outfit and customize various weapons, and I'm very curious then to see just how much that affects this more direct approach to a lot of things like firing modes and how different weapon types already affect so much of what you're able to hit reliably. But as for right now, I'd say that's most everything you need to know about Every Day We Fight, which, as a reminder, is hitting early access on July 10th. So we're a little bit on the early side here, but before too long, people will be able to try this out for themselves. And speaking for myself, I already feel safe saying that the mechanical side of this seems to work, like the actual gameplay of utilizing your turns in a more active manner. I like that a lot. But what I think the ultimate success of this will wind up being is simply how well it does in other parts. Is the story appropriately interesting and engaging? Are these characters interesting? And does exploration and the actual combat system stay fresh and introduce enough mechanics over the entire course of the game to remain fun all the way through? Are the kind of things I'll be sort of paying attention to as this game progresses, and while I don't review early access games, so it will be a while yet before anything like that comes around when I do inevitably wind up reviewing this, I think a lot of it will come down to how well they built everything around the novel mechanic. But that's pretty much where I'm going to wrap it up. I thought the ideas here were really cool, so I was pretty excited to share them with you guys, but by all means, let me know what you think about this down in the comment section below, which of course means to like, comment, subscribe, all that YouTube jazz. But regardless of any of that, truly, just thank you so much for watching. I really do appreciate it. May you wander in wisdom and have an amazing day.